I hope you will indulge me, which is that we had this kind of crazy idea that instead of just having a panel, we would do things a little bit differently, and we're going to do this like The Tonight Show. So consider this the Create Show with our three founders who are joining us on stage today. And I'd like to start by welcoming our first guest to the Create Show, and that is the co-founder and chief brand officer of Sweetgreen, Nathaniel. Nathaniel, come on up. That's pretty bold, I know. I don't know what I've done. I'm going to regret that for sure. Okay, I've got my cell phone. If you have questions for Nate, please send them along. Nate, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. Let's go back to 16 years ago,
Yeah.
2007. You and your co-founders were basically kids when you started this organization, this company. What was that? What's the story? How did Sweetgreen, the first Sweetgreen, come to be?
So Sweetgreen was born August 1st, 2007, so it's been a little over 16 years. But even before that, I actually grew up here in LA. My dad is Chinese, my mom is Mexican, so I grew up with great food at home and a passion for entrepreneurship because they were immigrant entrepreneurs. And so early on, had that in my blood, and I actually met my partners, John and Nick, who also had parents that were immigrant entrepreneurs. And so it almost gave us the permission to try something, and they gave us the permission to fail. And at an early age, knowing that was really powerful. And so to take you back to 2007, we had no experience in food, we had no money, and we had essentially it was the beginning of the recession. So everything that could have gone wrong went wrong to open the first Sweetgreen. But we wrote the business plan, and we raised $300,000. Was the first, cost us $300,000. The first store is about 560 square feet, so very tiny. The ADA bathroom is bigger than our kitchen.
Wow.
And $300,000, and the average check size was $5,000. So it was about 60 people that we had to raise money from. And we figured out a way to pull it together and really just had this concept of trying to figure out the best way to create the best quality ingredients with the best quality product in an environment that was designed for students at the time. And the thesis was some of the best food companies with the best marketing were traditionally the ones that were the most unhealthy. And we wanted to say, why can't you do that for healthy food? So the beginning, August 1st, 2007, Sweetgreen was born.
When did you know you had a hit on your hands? At what point was it like, oh, this is going to be a big deal?
Constantly following that, but I think it was that following spring. So the first December was very challenging for Sweetgreen. It was December 2007. A lot of people don't want to eat salad when it's cold outside, so we almost went under that first December. Just made payroll, and we knew that if we could just kind of figure out how to get to the spring when the students got back, that was our moment. And I think it was that following spring, students came back, line her out the door, and the concept kind of took off.
Was that the only moment that it felt like maybe this isn't going to work out after all? Or have you had any other moments along the way like that?
I mean, that still happens, I feel like sometimes, but I'll never forget what my dad told me when I pitched him the idea the first time. He goes, "Nathan, that salad dressing better be damn good." and I think about that all the time, and I feel like, I'm sure as everybody knows, like restaurant business is tough, and it's some say it's kind of like a day-to-day battle with retail. And so what was really important to us was building the right foundation of the brand, the culture, core values, and just not really sacrificing on the quality of the ingredients. I remember when we opened our second restaurant in DuPont Circle, if anybody knows where that is, in DC. Was supposed to be our flagship location, about 3 times the size of the first one, 3 times the cost. And we opened April 1st, 2009, and we had no customers, nobody. This is probably for the first week, there was like very few customers that came in. And it was the first time we looked at each other and we said, oh shit, this isn't gonna work. This really is not gonna work. But we told ourselves we had to do some type of marketing. And so the only marketing we knew how to do at the time was to serve healthy food and DJ. So that's what we did. We went to Guitar Center. We bought a big $400 speaker. We put it outside, and we were in this place in DuPont Circle where everybody was just across the street at the Starbucks on the other side, and we just had to figure out a way to get people to come to our side of the street. So our brilliant idea was to play music really loud. And so we DJ'd every Saturday and Sunday for 3 months. It turned into a block party, which turned into a big music festival that we did for many years in DC called Sweet Life Festival. And so music and culture and lifestyle from the beginning was a big part of our approach.
That's great. Now, I know that since the beginning, Sweetgreen, you guys have been very rooted in some lofty ambition. You guys have been dedicated to changing supply chain and offering healthier, more nutritious foods in a fast casual setting. I'm wondering, how did those lofty ambitions, when you guys launched, how have they evolved? How much have you guys really grown and tried to sort of protect that sense of, you could change the world through Sweetgreen?
Yeah, it really starts with our core value of win-win-win. It's essentially where the customer wins, the company wins, and the community wins. And at the core of that is just the quality of product. And I think that's been something that's been really important to us, our food ethos, really trying to source the best quality ingredients, doing it in a very simple way, and building a brand around that. And so whether it's technology innovation, supply chain, the way we think about storytelling, it all kind of revolves around that win-win-win core value. Sure. And that's really been there since day one.
All right, question from the audience. Didn't Sweetgreen also sell frozen yogurt at the beginning, and what happened with that?
So everybody always asks us the question, where did the name come from, Sweetgreen? So in the beginning, the menu was salads and frozen yogurt. So the frozen yogurt was the sweet, and the salads was the green. And it was called Sweet Flow. It was before the kind of pinkberry craze, and we served it, and it ended up was a great part of the business. I think over time, the salad and bowl kind of took over in terms of real estate, and especially with the explosion of delivery. So we sunset the Sweet Flow, but we are working on some things to hopefully bring it back.
All right, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
Many of the folks in the room are founders themselves, much like yourself. That's why we're doing this Founders Forum. And I think something that probably a lot of people in this room deal with, that I know you've had to deal with, is how do you evolve the relationship with your co-founders?
Yeah.
Because you guys have been friends and co-founders for 16 years. I mean, longer than 16 years, friends, presumably. How do you suggest co-founders invest in their relationship? What's worked for you guys?
So my relationship is beyond a marriage with my two co-founders. We lived together for a long time. We've worked together. Our wives joke that we prepared each other for marriage because we spent so much time together. But I think from the beginning, because none of us had any experience, we all kind of grew up in this business together. There wasn't one person that felt like they knew more or came with a little bit of like a technical co-founder situation. And I think it really helped us not really have an ego on what people did in the beginning. We did everything. We opened the restaurant, we made the salads, we cashed people out, we wrote the business plan, and it was really about survival. And through the power of that, you really create a bond. And over time, each of us have our separate roles, but I think the one thing that we do that's really important is we actually try to carve out once a year a founders retreat where the three of us go, and we kind of go solo, and we all spend time connecting about the business, but also just checking in with each other. And that once a year weekend trip goes a long way, and seeing how people are feeling, a lot of life changes, but we've done that for the last 16 years, and it's been really powerful for us.
Question from the audience. How did you go from being basically 3 CEOs to the roles that you guys have today?
It was really just kind of what we naturally drifted towards. My co-founder John's the CEO. Nick really kind of runs all of our food and supply chain, and I kind of oversee a lot of the marketing and creative, and it kind of just happened that way. There's still a little bit of overlap, and I think the thing about our relationship is it's almost kind of like one constant board meeting, right? Like where board meetings happen 4 times a year. Because we spend so much time together, there's a lot of conversation that happens casually that really helps push things forward. So even though we have our own separate roles, we're very much in communication, in sync.
All right, I like this question from the audience. The retreats you've taken.
Yeah.
Where was the first? Where was the most recent?
First one was outside DC in Virginia. We lived in DC for about 8 years before we moved to LA. And the most recent one was actually right here in Joshua Tree.
Oh,
Yeah.
very cool.
Great.
All right, so whether you guys wanted this or not, you guys have really been pegged as the innovators. You've kind of carried this mantle of being trailblazers, innovating. That especially included with technology innovation early on. What kind of pressure do you feel that has put on you guys as co-founders, as brand leaders? How have you dealt with that sort of label that's been given to Sweetgreen?
I don't know if it's pressure. Maybe it's just the way that we approach everything, because we didn't have any experience in restaurants when we started, is always approach everything with a beginner's mindset. Everything. And we get a lot of things wrong too. So not everything is innovative and it works and it can scale and it's great. But we try to go into every situation or every problem that we have to solve with a really important beginner's mindset, because everything is changing. I mean, the whole industry has changed in the last 3 years. And so to think that you know what you're doing all the time 100% is kind of insane. So we try to approach everything almost like with childlike wonder in a way. And I think sometimes you have the founder syndrome where it's like, oh, you want to do all these things, but you don't have the time or resources to do them. So over the years, we've tried to kind of stack rank the innovations, choose the ones that we can actually execute every year, but always come in and making sure that we don't think we know every single answer to every single problem.
Sure. Okay, I love how many questions you guys are sending in. I also hate you for how many questions you're sending in. No, please keep them coming, but we are going to save a few of them for later on in our session, because now it is my pleasure to welcome our next guest to the show, and that is Lauren Bailey, the co-founder and CEO of Upward Projects and Postino Wine Cafe. Lauren, welcome to the Create Show.
Hello.
Welcome to the couch.
Thank you.
All right, so let's start with just same question for you, Lauren. Postino Wine Cafe. What's the story of how you opened the first one? What was that like?
Well, my partner actually went to Italy, and he loved the fact that he could just roll into anywhere in the street and just go in a place, have a glass of wine and a hang, and came back to Phoenix and really didn't see that type of experience anywhere. And when we met, I had fallen in love with food over the years, and when I was in college, made a fake resume and got my first job at P.F. Chang's, rolled by that, and I was like, oh, this place looks really busy. It was the second one ever. And so I'd kind of had my first foray into that, and when we met, it was just a really exciting time. He had had this iteration more of a wine bar, and I kind of brought the food component to it. And what we really wanted to create was a place that anybody could just come in and hang out. You could do whatever you wanted there. You could order food. You could get just a glass of wine. You could come in late night, come in for brunch, and use it how you wanted to.
And was it same as what I asked Nate? I mean, was there a point at which it was, oh, wow, we've got a hit on our hands?
No. I mean, I tell my team, I'm like, we didn't even have P&Ls. We had 4 restaurants, and we didn't have a P&L. So everybody calm down. No, he was a bartender and I was a waitress, and we both put ourselves through school doing that. And, we paid all our bills. Like they'd roll in there with the Cisco truck or whoever, and we'd write them a check, and then whatever money was left over, that was, that was our business model.
Yeah, been there.
It kind of works, y'all. No offense to all the CFOs in the room. I love you and need you desperately. No, I think and at that time too, it was like I tell the younger entrepreneurs in the room, there was a day when information wasn't as readily available and you couldn't really Google how hard is it to do things, or how is everyone else doing, and how do your numbers stack up against everyone else. I mean, I knew that people liked Postino, but there was a lot of days of us like crying behind a dumpster, slamming a beer, and then patting each other on the back and being like, all right, we gotta get back out there, So I think even still today, I wake up every morning and be like, please God, let people show up today, You just never lose that. So I think when you start thinking, I've got a hit on my hands, it's like you're gonna get hit in the face with something that's gonna knock you down a couple pegs.
So any moments when you felt like the wheels were about to come off?
About 20 minutes ago, no. I think that's the thing that's so wonderful and challenging and beautiful about the business is that sort of the wheels are always coming off every day. And like hearing your friends talk about this, you're like, oh, you're my people, yes, I don't, maybe this is crazy, like I don't look at it like it's hard, it's sort of just a puzzle.
Yeah.
Like I love Wordle, like it's hard, you're probably gonna like not get the word maybe, I don't know, but to me, I like look at it like today's a puzzle, I gotta figure it out, and I'm game for it. I think I have to say I don't know any other job though, so maybe if I had a different job, I'd feel differently, but no, I love it.
Related to that puzzle concept, you and I spoke earlier this year, and you mentioned that running a restaurant is an art and a science, and you talked about kind of how you invest in both sides of that, but especially the creativity part of this, the art half of that. How do you maintain the art piece of the art and science, but how do you strike the balance, I guess, overall?
I think that it's funny, Nate and I were talking about this while we were waiting to come up here, but I think there's a point that you have this guttural feeling as a founder that you know what the right lane is and you know the answer. And it's hard to explain why, and I think sometimes we all struggle to even articulate ourselves of like, this is the wrong path that we're on, or this is the wrong decision. And the art piece of it is that guttural, like I know this isn't the right way to do this. And sometimes the science, I think, can artificially influence people to make decisions that aren't in line with that intention. And so case in point, if you read a bunch of data about food costs, all of a sudden your team starts designing dishes and entrees that aren't very good, but they're great at food cost, but no one wants to eat them. And so I think it's this constant reminder of telling your team, like, make something great first, and then figure out how to make it work financially. And I think the more data we get and the bigger you get and you have all these people feeding you with all of this data about whatever it is that you just gutturally know is right can artificially influence you to the point where you're just like scared to do what you know is right. And I told Jason and Nate, I was like, I just sent a founderitis email this morning, I call it, which is just like a rip of like, this is all the things that are not working about this from a guest perspective, and then stitching it together in the sense that like, this is why from an IT perspective this isn't working, from an ops perspective, from a brand and culture piece, from a marketing side, and then bringing it together to help them see that we're either on the right path or the wrong path.
You also have mentioned sort of this concept of forced creativity, and you mentioned, I want to say it's a blue sky meeting you do, maybe it's something called something different, but you guys really put yourself in a room and really just throw anything at a wall and see what goes. Tell me about that process.
My team really loves this day, it's like my favorite day. I think that the thing that's interesting about the world that we're in now is anything's possible, and we watch this whole world transform before our eyes because COVID happened, right? And it was just such a reminder of how innovative and inventive people can be. And for us to take a step out of what we're doing every day and think about like, how could we really reinvigorate this thing? And a lot of times if I say the word innovation to you, you're probably thinking about like, oh, new items, new things to do, and it's not just that. It's like innovating the things that you're already doing and doing them better or differently, and having conversations around, there's a ton of friction for our guests, or there's a ton of friction for our employees with this, or whoever, or vendors, and then figuring out different ways to do that. And if we could solve this problem, I mean, if you think about Starbucks, right, they'll openly tell you like, we knew we were gonna have like good coffee, but we were gonna have great customer experience. And we're gonna be, we're gonna have this app that makes it so easy to just get coffee, and it's gonna be consistent every time, and that's what we're gonna nail. And that in itself is innovative, right? And then sidebar, they'll end up by accident having the second biggest bank in the US because probably 95% of people in this room have a balance on your Starbucks card, right? And there's like these things that are born out of this innovation and like forcing people to think about innovative ways to solve problems. And we're never out of problems in the restaurant business, like ever.
You spent a decade really putting sweat equity into this business before you got it to a point where you could delegate. What kind of people structure were you building? How did you get this thing to a point where you didn't have to keep putting in that sweat equity?
How did you know that? No.
Mind meld.
Let me see. I think it's pretty tough because there's parts of me that want to like keep a handle on everything. You have to do it. And I think that getting really comfortable with the fact that if you don't do it, you're just really holding back your business and you're doing a disservice to the team that you hire. You won't be able to hire great people who need room to influence and affect the business in a positive way. I've had some really great mentors, and every single one of them has told me, like, hey, align on the end result and let them figure it out in the middle. Because I think for founders, we want to be like, oh, but if you just did that, if you just turn the knob, let me help you because you're just going down the wrong path. It's like, no, just spend the time on like, what is the end result? Where do we want to land? And then they will figure out probably a better way to get there than you will.
Oh, that's great. You mentioned that term founderitis. What is founderitis as you see it, and how do you overcome it or avoid it?
I don't think it's like about overcoming it or avoiding it. I think it's recognizing it and telling your team, hey, I'm having a founderitis moment right now, because they're with you because they want to work for a founder. Most people, that's a different wiring. They'll come and I'll interview people and they're like, don't worry, I've worked for a founder. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? But I think it's these moments where you're very passionate. I think it may be borderline crazy. You have a vision that at times you have a hard time articulating. You stick your finger in stuff where you shouldn't, get out of the way, hold people back, obsess about things. There's pros and cons to it. It can it's like anything, like fire. It can keep you warm in the winter or burn your house down, however you decide to use it. But it's a very important piece of what makes these brands great, I think. And it's just so lovely to talk to other people and hear the story about how their founderitis influences their business.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. Well, if you have questions for Lauren, again, please text them to me, and we will get to those here later on in our session. But I am excited now to turn to our third and final guest for the Create Show, and that is the co-founder and CEO of the fastest growing chain in America, Crumbl Cookies, Jason McGowan. You guys over this model yet? All the standing up and moving
Call
down.
Jay Leno.
All right, Jason, I think
it.
probably everybody in the room has a Crumbl in their neighborhood by now.
Oh, good. We're doing our job.
And that's
then.
in 6 years. How did that happen? How did you open the first store? How did this brand come to be?
Well, after realizing that Sweetgreen was making the whole world, healthy, we had some serious concerns. And,
Yin to our yang.
Nathaniel was just doing too good of a job, so we had to, balance him out. No, it was me and my co-founder Sawyer. We didn't really set out for this big grand plan or trying to create all these cookies around America. We just wanted to do a business together, and we opened up in a small place in Logan, Utah. And I come from the tech world, and so I've been doing technology and things digital for so long, and I'm like, oh, I want to do something just like a physical product. And my partner and I wanted to do something together, and so we just like, let's do cookies. How hard could that be?
You wanted some pain.
Yeah, we wanted pain, lots of pain. And so we opened up the first, and of course, if we put our name on it, we want to make sure we do the best that we could. And so we launched with one flavor and one product, so cookie and chocolate chip. And that's all we launched with because we had no idea what the crap we were doing. We just I remember getting this, we had this big commercial mixer, and I put my recipe together that I did at my family's house, and the paddle would not touch the ingredients. And I'm like, did I buy a wrong mixer? I didn't realize you had to actually add more in there. That's just showed you how naive we were when we got started in this business. And but we opened up the door, and we had 6 months left because we rented a location that was set to be demolished in 6 months. We did all the things right at the very beginning, yeah. And so it was really just a fun project. We were like, if it doesn't work out, then it's fine. It's only 6 months. And we opened up the doors, and people started coming through the first day, and then all of a sudden the next day, just people started hearing about it, and just started coming through the door, and we just had one product, and that was it. And that's kind of how we got started, and it was just a crazy experience, and we did not expect it at all. We did not expect we thought we were just doing something for fun. I come from the tech world, and at the time, DoorDash wasn't, all throughout the United States, and so I'm like, you could order pizza, and so we built all the technology for cookies to be able to be delivered to people's houses, and that was such a novel experience like DoorDash was when it first got started, and that's kind of how we got started.
So it sounds like you knew you had a hit on your hand on day 2, basically.
Well, kind of. I mean, we're like, is this just for college towns? Because, people always tell you, like, they're really helping tell you how you're going to fail all the time. I don't know if you founders have experienced that too as well, right? Like every day, you're going to fail because cookies will only do well in a college town. So that just make sure you keep it in Logan. And so at that time, it was like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work. And so whenever someone tells me I can't do something, it's kind of like, we should try that out.
Sure.
And see if that's going to do it. And so we went outside of a college town, and then we said, well, it's only going to work in Utah, because apparently only people in Utah like sweets. And so we tried it outside of Utah, and then it would only work in places that were, that were cold because they were warm cookies. So I'm like, let's go to Las Vegas. And so that's just kind of our personality of like, let's see if that is really, really true. And then, when we opened our first franchise location, so we had 2 locations, and in our first franchise location, I was just so sick and so worried because Sawyer's dad, my partner's dad, and mom were going to do the business, and I was like, what have I done? Like, they're putting all this money on credit cards, they're doing all this stuff. I'm like, if this thing fails, it's just going to be so embarrassing for me. And I remember just stressing out so much, and we went into the first location, and in the first location, I was walking in there, and there were people coming in the doors, and they're like, oh, when are you going to open? What is this? We're like, it's a cookie business. And they're like, oh, that's so great. We're so excited. Every other business that's been in here has failed. And I'm like, oh, great. So it was just like sweat and stress. So I really wasn't like, this is like going to be totally amazing. But all of a sudden, people came through the door, and it was just lines out the door. And so, early on within the first, 5 or 6 locations, we kind of were like, well, maybe this is something. Maybe this is something that we could roll out, in other places. So
You guys decided to take the path toward franchising. Tell me about that decision. Why did you decide to franchise instead of do corporate growth?
Well, early on, when we started the very first location, it was going to be me, my cousin Sawyer, and it was going to be his mom. And Sawyer's dad was like, no one's going to be buying cookies. No one's going to buy like a $4 cookie. This is ridiculous. You're going to waste all your time and your money and your energy being in this business with your son and, with your nephew, and it's just going to be a big waste of time. And so after we opened the second location and it was going really, really well, I got a phone call from Sawyer's dad, and he's like, my wife's going to kill me. Can we be a part of this? And I was like, sure, but like we already got this started, so it didn't make sense to have them. And I had, at that time, self-invested the whole thing, and so we didn't have any investors or anything. So I'm like, it doesn't make sense to do investors. And I was like, looked around and saw that there was an opportunity, like franchising was how they did it. And so we just decided to franchise. So again, there was no like some grand master plan. It was like, let's just franchise. She wants to do a franchise, and so that's how we got started with our franchise.
And now as a franchise, you guys are on an unprecedented growth trajectory. I don't think the industry's ever seen anything like it. How do you build systems to grow this quickly without the wheels coming completely off?
Well, for us and for me, whenever I see a nail, I see a technology hammer. Just coming from a background of technology, so it's always been about how can we leverage technology to scale. And so early on, we had no idea, but then when we started getting to those a few more locations, we thought, okay, if this is going to be big and throughout the United States, let's solve the scale problem once. And what I mean by that is, if we're going to solve a problem, we're going to solve it for 1,000 franchisees versus just 5 or 10 or 100 or 500. So we started asking ourselves questions like, how do we maintain quality across 1,000 stores all at the same time? And you're like, well, we could hire people and we could have them go check and do audits and do all these other different things, or we could build technology that anytime a customer orders cookies, they could take a photo of it, and then it would send it back to our central system, and then we could have someone go and rate those cookies, and then it would send it out to all of our franchise partners, and they'd be able to rate each other and see how they're doing compared quality-wise across all their neighbors. And so we started to think really, really early on about building systems and leveraging technology to handle quality or scale or any of those kinds of things. And so technology was a real big driver of helping us maintain a lot of that quality and those things that we needed.
Shifting gears a little bit, a question from the audience. What was the price of the first cookie, and what is the price of chocolate chip today?
So the price of the very first cookie, it was a 4-pack in Logan, Utah, 4 for $10. And the prices of a cookie right now is anywhere from $3.99 to up to $5.
Okay.
So.
All right. Another question from the audience. What do you believe resonates with multiple generations about Crumbl?
I think cookies are pretty universal, and I'm learning, whether it's, on TikTok right now, we have tons of people that follow us. We've got more followers than Nike and Starbucks combined. And people love, young demographics love it. The seniors love it, and moms love it. And so I just think everyone has grown up eating cookies. They're, at least in America, most of their lives. And so I think it's just something that's nostalgic and childhood memories of eating cookies. And even today, people eat a lot of cookies. So.
Yeah. Question from the audience I have to read word for word because I think this is well phrased. Whose crazy but genius idea was it to switch the flavors on a weekly basis, and what's your favorite flavor?
So this was born out of necessity. On our very first franchise location in Bountiful, Utah, we had 11 flavors at that time because we kept adding flavors. And Sawyer's parents, at the end of the week, they're just bawling, we were running out of all the flavors. They were crying, and they're like, there's no way we can do this. And we're like, well, we're a franchise, so we got to go do other stuff now. And they're like, please don't leave us. And so it was really born. We're like, what should we do about this? And it was just a problem of we can't maintain, making sure all the cookies and stuff were in stock all the time. And so we're like, how about we just rotate this thing? It'll get people super excited. And then we're like, when should we launch it? And it was just like a brainstorm session, just sitting at the end of a long week, exhausted, tired. We're like, let's just drop it on Sunday. We're closed that day. Everyone will just be so annoyed they can't go get it that day, and it'll be fun. It'll create lots of buzz. and so it was us brainstorming and coming with all those ideas, and that was really what it was born. It was born out of a necessity to be able to kind of service our customers in a better way.
Sure.
And of course, the whole business changed that very night. Yeah. So.
I think it was Juwan mentioned earlier today, just this sense of so many company founders are inundated with outside parties trying to sell products, get you to be partner with them. You must get this. I can't even imagine all the noise around you right now, people trying to get Crumbl to partner with this, do that. How do you make sure you focus on the actual opportunities for Crumbl that would make sense for the business while quieting the rest of the noise?
I think Lauren kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier here, whereas you've just got to focus on the customers. I mean, at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is get customers to come in, try the product, love it, and keep coming back and back and back again. And so you can't let your team and all these other outside influences kind of drag you away from that core mission of just really trying to, delight and surprise those customers in positive ways. And so how I look at it is I look at where do we need and where are some holes that we have that will help take the customers to the next level. And then I can look through emails and those kinds of things to do it. But largely, I ignore a lot of it. Sure. And I don't know if that's ideal, and maybe that's bad for us, and maybe we miss a lot of opportunities. But I think as founders, you have to learn how to say no, and you have to learn how to focus on the customer. Because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters is getting the customer in the door and having them come back again and again and again.
Absolutely. I'm going to turn things now to the whole panel. Something I did before Create was I polled a couple founder friends here in this audience for questions that they would ask you as fellow founders. And so I have some questions here that I want to ask the whole panel. Starting with, at how many locations did you take on institutional capital? Did you think it was too late or too early? Nate, let's start with you. Institutional capital, too late, too early?
Store 20. And I think it really depends on the concept. Some are more capital intensive than others. I think it also is founders, when you take on that type of money, you have to really, you have a lot more responsibility in terms of expectation around growth and being accountable to something. I think for Sweetgreen it was the right time, but I really think it depends on what you really want and how big you want to take it. Because it's definitely not your money, and it comes with a lot of other kind of expectations. I think what's important, though, is making sure that it doesn't distract you from what's really important. And really, for us, it was really important to continue to build a brand and differentiate our business. And I think it's really easy to just kind of copy and paste and roll things out. but you really have to make sure that you maintain the intimacy also as you scale.
Lauren, what was that for you?
We partnered with Brentwood Associates out of LA when we had 11 units, and it couldn't have come at a better time. I think for us, we had the intention of getting really smart capital, and they've been incredible partners to us. And they've seen the movie several times before with a lot of different concepts, and they've just been really additive to our business. And I would say that really helped in terms of also what Nate was saying, because they weren't coming to the table just from the outside. I mean, they'd seen growth stories before, they'd seen founder-led businesses, and so we didn't necessarily have those same issues. And then a couple years into our partnership with them, COVID hit. And I remember talking to a founder, and he said to me, "You're gonna know who these people are about how they act when something goes wrong." And that could never have been more true. And those guys were on the phone. I knew several people who had other private equity investors were like, "Good luck, guys. By the way, we're not giving you any more money." And Brentwood was not that. They were like, "Let's get on a call. Let's see who else wants to join this crusade with us. Let's partner up. Let's share information. We're here to support you guys." They were highly active. They were one of the first people to the table to take the PPP money, which a lot of them were nervous about. And you know, I think that that's the diligence that you do if you do partner with someone like that, or even an investor, is so important. And to find out, I called every CEO, former and current, that they had and couldn't find anything bad on them, and it was worth every minute because it's a deep relationship.
Jason, did you take capital besides franchising?
I funded the entire thing. I was lucky enough to have other exits before, so I just decided to fund it myself. So
It's great.
Sidebar, he's a tech genius.
Sidebar, he is a tech genius.
Not only the fastest growing company, but also a tech genius.
Yeah, we gotta rub some of that shine off of him.
Because it's contagious.
So Lauren and Nate, who was the first hire you made after getting capital, after raising capital?
CFO.
Smart.
We hired a COO. That was the first hire.
Okay. How have you maintained culture while scaling? Jason, we'll start with you because I know that's part of what you were talking about.
Well, a lot of culture is not about what you say, it's about what you do, right? It's when people see kind of what you're doing. And so I think regardless of what size you are of a company, it's just who you are as a person and how you interact with your team and how they then interact with everyone else really defines and sets your culture. And so you have to really, for me, regardless of your size, you have to really be really thoughtful and intentional about what you do and why you do it. Like one example for us is we're all about friends and family. We're about bringing people together. So we talk a lot about cookies, but the reason why they're large is because they're meant to be shared. And that makes you want to share them with other people. And one thing that we did is our company just was, I feel like they weren't getting it. And we were like, this is about families. It's about bringing people together. And so our HQ, we've got about 500 employees. And for the last 2 summers, we've been like, everyone takes Fridays off for the whole summer. And then they're like, they weren't going and spending the time with the people. So I said, okay, we're going to pay for you to go on vacation. And it was so drastic and just so crazy to everyone that like things just changed with that one value that we have of just, you know, relationships and people. And all of a sudden we started seeing floods and floods of people spending time with their grandmas, or they're flying out and visiting people they haven't seen in years and years and years. And so it just created that culture and that feeling. So it wasn't necessarily like, we're about friends and family. It's what did I do? What was the action that made me show that friends and family are really, really important? You know, do I call them on Saturday when they're supposed to be with their families or their friends? What kind of culture do you do? So I think a lot of times people have a culture of what they want to do. They do something different and they say something different, and that's where you get into huge problems. And so as a company, you've got to really be intentional and thoughtful about your actions and what you do, because that really is what sets the culture in your company.
That's great. Lauren, how have you maintained culture?
Fun times, baby. Like I said, we're not doing rocket science. We're not saving babies, all the things. But I think that, you know, for me, it's been really important to keep our teams in this state of oxytocin, right, versus cortisol. We know that humans perform better when they're in that state. There's been tons of studies about this, and so we love pranks, we love laughter, we like events, we love recognition. We like people to feel like they're part of something. And if you've ever been in a restaurant where everybody's like overly serious, or they're super worried about making mistakes, or maybe they've been waiting on you, who's the owner of the business, and they get all nervous and they start like making mistakes, or they're shaking, bringing the thing, like that type of like world where it's okay to laugh, it's okay to joke with people and have fun at what we're doing. If you've ever walked in a restaurant also and you can tell that the people working there actually like each other, it feels different. You're gonna have a better time. You're gonna feel like a regular. It's gonna just all flow. And so I think that's a big part of, as we scale, we think a little bit more intentionally about how to have that, because we know that we get the wonderful privilege of creating these businesses that so many people are gonna meet their future spouse, their best friend, their business partner. And if you think about it, like, I mean, it's a really spectacular thing. Yeah. And it makes waiting on people and serving people, and when you're happy, then they will be happy in its most simplest form.
Nate, what does that look like for Sweetgreen?
Yeah, it all starts with really values and recognition. I mean, our mantra at Sweetgreen is the small things are the big things, and we really try to empower our store teams to do what we call add the sweet touch, which is a kind of a hospitality euphemism to really go above and beyond, to know somebody as a local. When somebody comes in, knowing their name, saying hi to them, just like the small things that actually go such a long way in fast casual, and especially when you get to hundreds of locations. It's very hard to control. We do this thing at our corporate office where we do wine and gratitude, where we take all of the customer compliments, not complaints, the compliments that come in through our CX channel, and everybody at our support center writes handwritten notes to the people they name in our restaurants. So we send handwritten notes to head coaches, our employees, and team members from our corporate office, and then you go in their back rooms, and all of these notes are on their walls. And then what happens is the employees start writing handwritten notes to customers. And so it's these small touch points that really go a long way with hospitality. And Lauren was in one of our restaurants the other day, and she saw a woman with all of these core values pins. And so there are these pins that we essentially reward people with when we see them kind of do really well or represent a value really well. And it's just these small points of recognition that go such a long way. And it doesn't have to be these big, grandiose gestures. It's just making sure that people feel seen.
Great. So another question that I recruited from some founder friends. How do you manage your role within the organization? Is it fluid day to day, or has it become more structured? Nate, we'll stay with you. How has your role evolved? How do you manage that from a day-to-day basis?
I feel like in the beginning it was a lot more fluid. I think it was survival. It was you did every job, you learned every job. And really important, I feel like as a founder or any owner of a business, to understand every detail. Like everything, every part of the experience. I really believe what Jason said. You have to be so customer obsessed, because every part of that experience, because the experience evolves. You know, like when we started, there was just a front line. And now with the advent of delivery and all these mobile ordering apps and everything, there's like so many different touch points of the customer journey. And so really, I would say in the beginning, being a lot more fluid and being okay with being cross-functional, I think is important. I think over time, each of our roles have gotten a little bit more siloed in a good way, and we can kind of manage spheres of the business. But I think the beauty is, as a founder and having founderitis, is that you're kind of in everybody's things. And you're able to go into a restaurant and see the things that maybe not everybody else sees and articulate that, whether it's picking a napkin off the ground, whether it's talking about a leadership quality, or if it's talking about the P&L, is being able to have a pretty well-rounded view of the business is really important.
Lauren, how have you managed your role within the organization?
Nobody's safe. No, just kidding. That's kind of true. I think that it's important for me. You know, I never wanted to work in an office. That was my number one goal coming out of college, and so we named our corporate office the Lab, just so, try to like mirror that. But I think that you have to go do the job, and I feel really lucky because I came up through operations, and so I have that familiarity. But doing that job, you'll see, when we were small, we were like a little speedboat. You know, it was easy to change course. You could just say, hey, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to use these straws and not these straws. Now, I literally had a huge meltdown. I'm like, why does it take 6 weeks to change what kind of straw we're using? I don't understand. And so there can be that frustration with it too, but I think it's like never giving up the intention of like, why do we need the different straw or whatever it is, but it's just messaging it differently and then doing the job, watching it, going through the motions of like, because the way our brains work is like, there's an easier, better, faster, more friendly way to do this. Usually you can check one of those boxes. And so I put it through that filter, and then I do try to go through the teams because they do have generally reasons why the straw takes 6 weeks to change. But I think we just can never stop doing that and being on the front lines and experiencing it. Like I call our restaurants, I look for our restaurants online, I go through, they know when I'm gonna be doing like, they're gonna get 25 screenshots with me like on my notepad, like this is annoying, you know, he's laughing because he knows he does it too, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I think that, you know, as a founder, you can get worn out. I was talking to Joth Ritchie about Dutch Brothers, and, you know, they call him like the founder whisperer because he's come into a lot of founder businesses. And, you know, we obsess about these things, but at some point we get tired, right? Like you're just like, I feel like it's either falling on deaf ears, it's not doing anything, it takes too long, and I think we have to invigorate ourselves to never stop doing that, but just do it in the right way.
Yeah. Jason, how has your role evolved within Crumbl?
Lots of times. So I guess the first part is you're doing everything, right? Like I'm the chief counter builder for my first location, right? Like I'm answering customer service while doing deliveries, and that's like my first role is like you're just an individual contributor. You're jumping in, trying to do as much as you can as a founder without dropping a ball, even though they are dropping. And then you kind of I moved into kind of the leadership role, which is, it's not about what you can do, it's what you can get your team to do, how they can become the best, right? And that's really what a job of a leader is how do you get the best out of somebody else? And so I moved into that kind of leadership role and working with teams and trying not to have the founderitis, but at the same time building a culture and that sort of thing of, you know, getting them to work on the right things. And then, you know, as we've gotten larger and larger, you know, we've got full C-suite, VPs, directors, you've got all this, you've got a bigger company, and you kind of move into this more role of you know, cultivating the culture. You know, now when I walk into a store and I look down and I pick up a piece of trash, that sets a culture and a tone. Where when I was one store, I was like, what the heck, who cares? There's a delivery to make, go make your delivery, and nobody really cares about that, right? But those small details, so you're thinking and being intentional and thoughtful about the culture, and still from that, figuring out how can I inspire? It's really about inspiring and inspiring the leaders and making sure that they can dream big and push beyond and be better than they thought possible because you're around. And so I think those are kind of the evolutions of what my journey's been like so far.
Right.
I just add to that really quick. I just want to say that I think that's also, you have to hire smart people and then teach them how they can build trust with you and what matters. And I think teaching them how to like do and see the things that you see, but then get out of their way. I think to your point, it's so well said, because if you hire someone that's not up to snuff with that and you're going to be constantly disappointed, you're going to avoid them, you're going to micromanage them, but they have to get results.
Yeah, I think that's really smart too as well, because sometimes people don't know the difference between someone who's smart and capable in doing it versus someone who's not. Yeah. And so sometimes you get that mistake where like this person's not actually capable of growing into this role. They may have been back in the day, but they are not now. And you're giving them responsibilities and they're not executing, and you're like, oh, that makes you want to have founderitis even more. But really it's about finding the right person for the role.
Yeah.
And you're missing, it's not necessarily what you're doing, but it's who's driving that boat and how you're helping them.
Well, and I can't imagine what you went through too with explosive growth. I mean, ours has been over like 17 years, like yours, so it was a little slower pain than maybe what you went through, but it's still hard.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time to before you had, well, when you had less than 10 locations, what advice would you give to yourself? Nate, let's start with you. Going back in time to time before 10 locations.
Honestly, I think it would be just a mindset shift. I feel like when we were a little bit younger, we took everything really personally that happened to the business as a founder. And as you guys know, in this business, you got to have thick skin, and you just have to really be resilient and not let things really affect you. And I think, you know, when you're young and you're starting a company and something goes wrong, you think it's the biggest deal. And I think if I were to go back, I would tell myself not to worry about some of these things I was worrying about.
Yeah. Lauren, how about for you?
I totally agree with that, but I'll say something different. But I think I'd invest in the relationships even more. We had this mindset like we do not know what we are doing. at all. And so we kind of knew we needed a lot of help. And I was real keen on once you graduate from college, cheating is legal, even though you've been told for your whole life it's not. I think I would have just leaned into that even more. Like, I don't remember ever going to something like this, sitting in a room like this, listening to founders, and I would have probably built that a little bit sooner and asked for more help, because it's just such a beautiful thing how many people are willing to help others.
Jason, if you can think back to time before 10 locations, what advice do you give yourself?
I think I'd just say, remember Lauren and have fun. Like, enjoy the journey. Sometimes you're so much looking to what's next and where you're gonna go, and like, you know, it's like the puzzle pieces like Lauren talks about. You're just trying to solve these problems every single day, but have fun in that journey, you know, because you're like, oh, when I get to like 500 locations or 1,000 locations, this is gonna be like the promised land, I'm gonna be so happy. And I mean, you are, but like some of my favorite memories are like not like, oh wow, I have all these locations, and it's like, this is crazy. It's like, it's me making deliveries and seeing the customers' faces when I make deliveries and wondering how that person ordered Crumbl cookies every single day and he's fit, you know? Like, how is that possible, you know? And just like, it's those early memories, you know, and those experiences that you have with your employees or with your crew or, you know, or just with your customers. And so don't be so much looking into the future and seeing that you have problems. You're still going to have the same problems, if not more, when you're bigger. So just enjoy the journey. Learn to have fun in what you do. And I think that's something that I tell myself is just have fun. And remember Lauren, because she likes to have fun. So,
Anything you would change? Any regrets? Anything you would change?
I think one regret is, you know, we thought we were pretty invincible, and so we were going into lots of locations. I think we went to some pretty small towns. Like, we haven't had any locations fail, but I still get up stressed about, you know, when we go into a smaller population. So I think as you scale, there might be a temptation to go into locations that are a little bit smaller for us, density-wise. And that just keeps me up at night and just figuring out ways to help them succeed. And then, of course, just find the right location. You can fix a lot of things in a business, but if you pick the wrong location, like it's like almost unfixable. I've personally gone down and like, the whole team's like, it's not fixable. I'm like, yes, it is. I'm going to go there myself. I'm founderitis. We're going to take care of this job, you know? And it's just really, really hard to overcome a location. And so, you know, figuring that out, and luckily we've done a phenomenal job, and the team has done a phenomenal job really of picking a lot of great locations. But I could see looking back, if we made some, you know, mistakes, that could be really, really costly, you know, picking the bad location. So those are the two things I would probably, that I regret not spending more time and being more thoughtful about.
Lauren, any regrets?
I've spent a lot of money on therapy not to think about this, but I'll do this one for you, Sam. Okay. No, I literally was meeting with Sam Fox one time. The guy's helped me for like 20 years, and I'm like, dude, I need you to tell me all the mistakes you made at the size that we are. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, you know, tell me what you did wrong. Like, he's like, I'm not sitting around like thinking about what I did wrong. I'm busy like trying to have a great shift, and what am I gonna do about this, and how do I wanna make my menu better? So I would say like a better narrative, a little bit about what you touched on, like how powerful your mental narrative can be and how you choose to spend your day thinking about how things that you can't really affect are whatever, the past, all the things, or what you can do in the future. And I feel like I wish I would have mastered that sooner.
Sure. Nate, how about you? Anything you would change?
Honestly, probably just moving faster on decisions and not second guessing yourself so many times. I feel like as you get bigger, you bring in a lot of more people with experience, which is really important because you need experience to grow. But then you kind of get in your head about it. I got all these people telling me what to do. It feels very corporate. Maybe we should just do what the consulting company tells you. And just really trusting yourself. Trusting yourself, because at the end of the day, you started this company and you're gonna push through. And I think just not second guessing and moving faster on some decisions that really define the business.
That's great. Well, if you didn't get a chance, or if I didn't read your questions that you sent in, I'm sure that our three speakers here would be happy to answer any questions you have after this or later on at our pool party, or at Createchella, excuse me. But for now, let's go ahead and give our speakers all a round of applause.